On this prequel episode, we're learning about coming back wrong and previewing Pet Sematary. Hello and welcome back to This Film Is Lit, the podcast where we talk about movies that are based on books. This is the prequel to the Pet Sematary episode. Not a lot of notes about the movie for me in a minute, because it just came out and there's not like a wealth of research that has been done on the production process and all that sort of thing. But we have a few things, and Katie has a learning things segment, and we're going to get into that right now. It's, what are we learning about? Coming back wrong.
No matter what anybody tells you, words and ideas can change the world.
What does this mean, Katie? What does this topic mean?
All right. Well, a lot of times on learning things, we cover like pretty broad topics.
Yes.
And that's on purpose.
Like
because,
fantasy versus fairy tales.
It's on purpose partly because I want us to have enough stuff to continue moving forwards.
Right.
So we don't always get like super duper specific.
Yeah.
But this week we're going to zoom in on a pretty specific trope, and that trope is called came back wrong.
Yes.
So a trope, for anyone who doesn't know, is a commonly recurring rhetorical device, motif, or cliche found in creative works. So it's something that you see all the time.
Yeah.
And I'm taking my info here from TV Tropes.
That's the most well-known resource on
which is a really interesting website, if a little bit hard to parse at times.
Yeah.
So if you haven't ever checked out TV Tropes, I highly recommend it.
It's a little bit
really
inside baseball.
Yeah.
But we mentioned it on one of the prequel episodes quite a while ago.
Yeah, we've mentioned it before. I've gotten stuff from there before.
Now I can't remember what it was, but we did a thing. Oh, did it have something to do with the wallflowers or
we might have pulled that.
There was something where we looked at. I read tropes.
Yes.
And you guessed what they were.
Yes.
I don't remember what that was for.
I think that was for the perks of being a wallflower, because we talked about YA fiction, and I'm pretty sure we did like yeah.
Something like that. Anyways, so we've mentioned it once before on a prequel episode. But anyways, yes, TV Tropes. It's a cool website.
Yeah. So this specific trope is somewhat self-explanatory just from the name, Came Back Wrong.
Yeah.
It describes a plot wherein an attempt to bring someone or something, as in the case of Pet Sematary, back from the dead, but it goes horribly wrong, and whatever comes back isn't who they were before.
Yes.
So there are 5 variations on this trope, so I'm going to run through those real quick. First one is soulless shell. Mm-hmm. So the person comes back, but without their soul.
Right.
The next one is damaged soul. So the soul does come back, but it's been damaged in some way, possibly leading to like madness or depression, or maybe a little bit of evil going on.
Right.
The third variation is monster from beyond the veil. This is where that person comes back as a demon or a monster of some sort, perhaps bent on destruction.
Yes.
The fourth variation is inhuman human. So the soul comes back just fine, but the body is a mess, maybe even technically still dead.
Gotcha.
And our fifth variation is called destination host unreachable. So with this trope, that's where it works. The body and the soul comes back, but due to that universe's rules, the resurrector and the resurrectee can't really exist on the same plane.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So it's that one's a little bit different from the other ones.
Yeah. Yeah, it is.
So I have some notable examples.
So yeah, I'm thinking of a ton.
Yeah,
already.
there's a ton. It's
trope.
a very common trope. I just pulled a couple that I figured people would recognize.
Yeah.
Buffy is a big one. Buffy plays with this trope quite a lot.
Spoilers right here if you haven't seen Buffy. I don't know if you're going to get into the specifics. But
I was not.
Okay.
But
okay, because that's a big spoiler. I'm just saying, we don't have to. I'm just going to say that's a big spoiler if we get into the specifics with the Buffy.
But I will say that they do that both with vampires and non-vampire characters. Because one of the main traits of vampires in the Buffy universe is that they come back wrong. They come back without their souls.
Yeah. Yes.
But they also do it with characters who are not vampires. And that is spoilers,
yes,
so we won't
spoilers.
get into that.
We'll leave it there.
Although it's been how long?
It's been how long? So yes,
you should watch Buffy.
You should watch Buffy. It's great.
Game of Thrones has quite a few examples from both the show and the books. Some of the better known ones, I think, are Khal Drogo comes back as an empty shell.
Yeah.
The Mountain.
Yeah.
Has he seemingly come back as like a zombie of some sort.
Basically like a zombie. And now there's some, I guess, I can't remember if he was completely dead. He was only maybe mostly dead when, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and mostly dead is still slightly alive.
Yeah, as we all know. But, so that may be slight, but I also thought of him, I thought of the Mountain, but I think I'm not, just for the pedants out there, he might not, I can't remember exactly. Right. We have just rewatched it, but I don't remember if he was ever fully dead. Or if he was like barely alive, and then what's his Meister? It's not Meister, but yeah.
And then of course all the whites.
Yeah, all the White Walkers. Yeah,
the White Walkers.
Well, not the White Walkers. The whites.
Yeah, the whites.
Yeah,
the
humans.
The humans and the wildlings and everybody who was killed and then resurrected.
Yes, and they come back as monsters from beyond the veil.
Yes. Yeah, that seems right to me.
Yeah.
Also with a little bit of human, since their bodies are still like super damaged.
Yeah, I guess maybe I misread or misremembered what. Yeah.
Kind of like a combination.
Yeah,
of
kind
those
of both, because they are like not just a monster. They're human bodies, but they're like zombie versions of their human bodies, kind of.
Doctor Who also plays with and subverts this trope. One example is in season 1 when Rose resurrects Captain Jack, but she overdoes it and makes him effectively immortal. Yeah.
Yeah, and to clarify, season 1 of the rebooted series.
Of the rebooted series.
Yeah.
The entire premise of the show Pushing Daisies is built around
which I've heard is great. We need to watch that.
Yeah,
sometime.
I've heard it's
really
great too. But yeah, that's basically the entire premise from what I understand.
Yeah.
Season 1 of The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina
that was another one I was thinking of.
Shows us how this might work in universe for a witch, but definitely not for a mortal. Yeah. As we find out. Yes. We won't tell you who in case spoilers, you haven't watched it.
And that's it. We'll also recommend that season 2 just came out, and as soon as we're done rewatching Game of Thrones, we're about to jump back into Sabrina.
Yeah, that was an excellent season of TV.
Yeah.
Harry Potter also touches on this idea through the tale of the three brothers and the Resurrection Stone.
Yes, it does. The brother that brings back his dead lover, she's not quite there. She's sort of a soulless shell or damaged soul, one of the two. I can see it kind of being both.
I could also see that being Destination Host Unreachable. Yeah. Because she's there, but she's not really there. They can't interact.
Yeah. Yeah. You're right. But he can talk to her, can't he? I don't know. That's the thing. It's vague enough in the...
Yeah, it's vague enough. We don't really have the particulars.
Yeah.
Did you have any other examples off the top of your head you wanted to add? Because there's a ton.
No, there are a ton. That was most of them. It's another Game of Thrones spoiler. I think this one's obvious, and anybody who's... It's a Game of Thrones spoiler. I just have to mention it specifically because I want to talk about it in relation to the sort of different categories. In the instance of, skip ahead about 30 seconds if you don't want to hear this spoiler for season 6 of Game of Thrones. When Jon Snow comes back to life... he's not any of those things that we know.
I would call that a subversion of this trope.
That's kind of what I was...
because he comes back, but...
And he's fine.
At least
seemingly,
so far.
As far
as we know, he seems fine. Yeah. He's maybe a little more broody.
Yeah, well, no, not even more broody. I think he's just... Yeah, it's created a character change, but I don't think it's a result of being brought back to life by the process of it, but so much as what he's learned by being murdered by people and then coming back to life. Yeah. It's just more of character growth as any event would cause in your life. His just happens to be being dead and come back to life.
Right. So, at least for as far as we have seen, I would call that a subversion because it doesn't seem to have really affected him.
Yeah.
So one thing that I think is kind of fun to do with tropes is to think about why they're so prevalent in our stories. Why do we keep exploring this specific thing? Because this is a pretty specific thing.
It is a very specific thing, yeah.
And I think for this particular trope, it's an obvious exploration of a really tough topic.
Yeah.
Like the horrors of death and how we deal with that.
It is one of the most universal human experiences.
Yeah.
And one of the most universal human desires, I would imagine, to be able to bring a loved one or somebody back after they pass away is it's understandable that it is so widespread, even though it is very specific. It's one of those things that's just universal, and in a very primal, like, it's one of the most painful things.
Yeah,
so it drives painful, a lot of,
and it's very primal. It drives a lot of primal emotion.
Yeah,
I think. And I think these stories kind of function not quite as a cautionary tale, but you could argue it as a cautionary tale. I would argue a little bit, yeah. But kind of like putting forth the message that like death is a natural part of the life cycle, and we have to learn to deal with it because we can't bring people back. And if we try to, we will garner even worse results.
Yep. Unless they're
Jon
Prince
Snow.
That was promised. Spoilers. Or the king that was... Yeah, the prince that was promised.
Ugh, all his titles. All right, so I do have some homework.
Yeah.
I have not finished reading Pet Sematary, although I think I suspect what variation it might lean into. But if you're reading along with us, if you're watching along with us, I want to talk about on the main episode maybe what variation of this trope we find in Pet Sematary. Yeah. One or more, maybe a combination of some. So soulless shell, damaged soul, monster from beyond the veil, inhuman human, or in feline, as it were.
Yeah.
And destination host unreachable.
It's not going to be that one.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be that one.
The whole premise of what is going on. I'm going to go out on a limb and say
one of the first four or more, maybe.
Yeah, a combination thereof. And I think on top of that, it would be interesting to discuss what it uses this trope for. Like why... what the message is in relation to this trope within this given story. So cool. Great homework. Fun little learning thing segment. Let's move on to Pet Sematary book facts.
It was a myth. Kids used to dare each other to go into the woods at night. They knew the power of that place. They feared it. Those woods belong to something else.
All right. Pet Sematary is a 1983 horror novel by the one, the only Stephen King, who is now a repeat author for us.
Yep. Repeat offender.
Yep. In 1979, King was a writer-in-residence at the University of Maine, because when you get big enough, you get to be the writer-in-residence at various places. And the house he was renting while he was doing that was adjacent to a major road where dogs and cats were often killed by oncoming trucks. So basically the premise of the book. After his daughter's cat was killed by a truck along that road, he had to, explain the death to his daughter. They buried the cat. A couple days later, King started to imagine what would happen if a family were to suffer the same tragedy, but the cat came back wrong.
There you go.
He also considers the story a retelling of sorts of The Monkey's Paw, which is a 1902 short story by W.W. Jacobs.
I've heard of it.
You probably had to read it in school.
Yeah, it sounds familiar.
It's about parents whose son resurrects after they wish that would happen.
Interesting.
The book was also adapted into a film in 1989, which I've never seen.
Me neither. That was one of my notes, so now I have even less.
Sorry.
It's okay.
It was also adapted as a radio play in 1997.
I didn't know that.
The novel was nominated for a World Fantasy Award for Best Novel in 1984. However, it did not win. It won out to something that I didn't write down, but I didn't recognize the name of it. So who really won?
It lost to, you mean?
Yeah, it lost to. And my last very terrifying note is that King has gone on record stating that of all the novels he's written, Pet Sematary is the one which genuinely scared him the most. So super looking forward to finishing this book.
Fantastic.
Real psyched, you guys.
Well, all right. Those are your Pet Sematary book facts. Now let's talk about Pet Sematary, the 2019 film.
The ground is bad. It may be just some crazy folk tale, but there is something up in those woods. There's something that brings things back. Sometimes dead is better.
All right, we're going to talk about the movie real quick. I have what won that award in 1984. It was a book called The Dragon Waiting by John M. Ford. Fun little note, also nominated that year was George R. R. Martin for The Armageddon Rag, which I don't know what that is.
Yeah, I've never heard of that.
1983 mystery fantasy novel by American author George R. R. Martin. Anyways, all right. I just wanted to look up, and so anybody wondering what won that year, I've never heard of that either. So, all right, it's a 2019 film directed by Kevin Jolsch and Dennis Widmeyer. I believe they're Belgian filmmakers. It was written and they both wrote and directed a film together called Starry Eyes. I've never heard of it, and they have not done much else apart from that. That or at least notable. That was like their top credit.
Interesting.
This one was written by Jeff Bueller, who wrote Midnight Meat Train, which is a movie, like a horror movie with Bradley Cooper in it from like a while ago. The Prodigy, and they wrote on a sci-fi original TV show called Night Flyers, which I have not seen any of these projects. It stars Jason Clarke, who you probably most know from maybe Zero Dark 30, but he was also in Everest and Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, as well as a handful of other things. But he's the main character. He plays like the father of the family or whatever. Amy Seimetz, who is in the Girlfriend Experience television series on Starz, the Starz Network, which is based on the Steven Soderbergh film of the same name. This TV show is supposed to be really good. It's about like a high end escort or something like that.
Interesting.
Yeah. The original movie starred an actual pornographic actress in the main role. It was very controversial at the time when it came out.
That does sound controversial. I feel like that would still be controversial.
Yeah. I mean, the movie wasn't that long ago. The movie came out in like 2012 or something. Like, it wasn't that long ago, but they remade it as a TV series, and apparently it's pretty good. And that she's the main character in that. And then John Lithgow is the other top billed actor, and he's in everything. He's John Lithgow, but Third Rock from the Sun TV show. He's in Interstellar. He was in Cliffhanger, hundreds of other things, or 100 or so other things. He's in a ton of stuff. This is the second adaptation of the novel. As you mentioned, first was 1989. I haven't seen it. I have not. I know nothing of it. I have not seen a trailer for this movie.
I've seen one trailer for this.
I know literally nothing about this other than pets come back to life. That's the movie. Like, that's the story. Like, I know, it's one of those things that I've culturally missed out on, other than just sort of the vague idea of what it is. So that's like all the interesting. It's not even interesting. That's just like the basic. I could not find anything about this movie. And when I started looking through like the IMDb like facts and stuff, it was all like spoilers. So I stopped because I was like, it was like, in the novel this happens, but in this movie, then I'm like, okay, well,
I can't have that.
Can't read these. Great. So I had to skip over that. But the other kind of two things that are interesting is that so far it's grossed $25 million domestically and $42 million worldwide, and that's against a budget of just $21 million because they make these horror movies for nothing.
Yeah.
Horror movies are like the only other than like big budget blockbuster like superhero movies, they're like the other profitable theater projects because you can make them for nothing. I mean, again, the writer and directors that they got for this have not really done much. They're not paying like big name directors to come in. And it's kind of their model. Whatchamacallit does it really well. Who's done a lot of horror movies recently. Now I'm blanking on the studio's name, But there's just one studio in particular. It's not who did this. Paramount did this one. One studio has done a lot of really successful low-budget horror films that are all pretty good, like in the last 10 years. I can't believe I'm blanking on the name of that production company. Anyways, so yeah, it's made double its budget back, so it's doing great. And it has a 60% on Rotten Tomatoes, which I think is about where the first one is sitting as well. So it's not, it's sitting kind of in the same ballpark in terms of what critics think of it. Like I said, I've never seen it. I don't know nothing about it. I'm interested. I'm not a big horror movie. I guess this is a good place to preface this. I don't know if we've done a pure horror movie yet. Like, this is just like a horror movie.
No, we haven't.
Now, Pet Sematary might be a little different in the sense that it's a little sillier than, like... At least it seems to me like it might be sillier than, like... I don't know. Some other horror movies, but maybe that's not.
There's, like, pets dying. I might cry.
Right. I get that part. I just mean, like, once they're back... I could find it silly. I don't know. Maybe, we'll see. Yeah, I might not. I might not. I'm really interested to see that. But I'm not a big horror movie person. We are going to go see Us. I want to see Us really bad. But in general, it's not like my genre. I think I've mentioned that before.
It's not really my genre either.
Yeah.
But I'm interested to branch a little more out into that.
Yeah. I think it'll be interesting. So I'm excited to see it. We're going this Sunday to the theaters.
Yeah.
So go check it out. And then next Tuesday, come back for our discussion on Stephen King's Pet Sematary. Until that time, you can find us on all the social media. You can rate and review us on iTunes, Stitcher, or anywhere else you download our lovely podcast. I almost said brilliant. That was very... I was almost very not humble. Man, blanking.
It's been a long day.
Monday, so... until that time, guys, gals, non-binary, and everybody else...
Keep reading books.
Keep watching movies. And keep being awesome.